All right. I want to welcome you out tonight. We're going to talk about how to prepare to work with patrons. This is the step before you actually sit down with the patron and actually before you make the lesson plan itself. This is like the pre-lesson plan things you need to know. And then we'll also talk a little bit about a way to find new relatives in tree. It's kind of a well-established and well-used method that we've used in North Stake, Fresno North Stake, for finding people over the years. It's always worked pretty well. But first, we want to talk a little bit about how to prepare to work with our patrons. And so as we start to meet, start thinking about meeting with our patrons, one of the things we want to do is put the Savior at the forefront. This is going to be the thing that drives us, that leads and guides us in all that we do. Everything we do in family history should have the Savior in mind, whether it's the things we do, the planning, or whatever. The Savior should be put up front. We need to seek his inspiration, what to teach. As we learn the wants and needs of our patrons, we're going to want to meld that in with the Savior and the message of the restored gospel. As you prepare your lessons, you want to be in tune with the Spirit. As you meet with your patron, you definitely want to be in tune with the Spirit, and also as we actually present our lesson. So everything we do, we want to have the Spirit with us. One of the things I found very interesting was that nobody brings this up, but there's actually a ministering page at churchofjesuschrist.org. And there's a section on that in ministering with temple and family history work. And so this is really our calling, to be ministers in temple and family history work. I hadn't thought about it until I saw this page, that this really is truly a form of ministering. And it says, and what I like is what it says here. It says, there are many ways to minister. You don't have to do something grand or heroic. Even something small can have a profound effect. As you pray for guidance, remember the power of temple and family history to build testimony and heal relationships. And on this particular page, they go through a series of links that you can go to kind of familiarize yourself with being a minister of temple and family history work, talking about blessing others through this work, ministering to families with fun activities, finding ordinances, helping parents and youth prepare for the temple, learning about your family, helping others build family connections, explore the Gospel Living app for more fun ideas, explore church magazines for ideas, and using relatives around me. And so there's quite a few things here that you can add to your little bag of tricks, if you want to call it that, that you have as a consultant. If you remember to kind of review these things that are under the ministering tab at lds.org. I thought this was kind of interesting. I thought I'd bring it up. So it says, how do we go about this ministry? Well, all the way back in 2016, that's back in the old days. So anything computer-wise, anything more than 5 years old is really old. Back in 2016 is when the church introduced Find, Take, Teach, which was the new approved way to do family history teaching, which was one-on-one instruction, which was something new. This is when they tried to break us away from these classes like we're in right now to start doing one-on-one teaching with patrons. And it really is the way to go. It is a successful way to approach things, one-on-one instruction, whether you call it find, take, teach, or whatever you want to call it. The idea is if you're working one-on-one, it makes a big difference. We found that out because shortly after they introduced this at RootsTech in 2016, the number of submitters in the church just went crazy. For 100 years, the number of people in the church, the percent of the people in the church that were generating the names that were being used in the temple hovered around 2 to 4% of the general church population. Well, once they introduced find, take, teach with one-on-one instruction in our stake, because we embraced this, we saw that our stake grew from 5% submitters to over 28%. And so it made a huge difference in our stake. And it was this one-on-one instruction that did that. Okay, so the key thing is this one-on-one thing. Try not to get away from it. Don't try to think that, well, if I can get a group of 20 in here, I can do 20 times the good, because it doesn't work that way. You'll probably do 1/20th of the good. Now, at about the same time, Mike Sandberg, who is one of the employees for the church that developed this program, talked in RootsTech and introduced the following idea. He said that as part of this find, take, teach process, family history consultants and helpers worldwide learn to apply a set of proven principles to create heart-turning experiences for those they work with. And that's really the crutch of the matter, is that we're not just presenting some stuff to people, we're trying to help change their hearts, turn their hearts to their ancestors, to really have them have a spiritual experience of their own. And these experiences help others to love family history and ultimately become saviors on Mount Zion, so that it's not just a phrase, but it's an actual thing that happens for them. So what they introduced then is what we still basically use today. The steps for planning a lesson would be first to contact your patron, learn about their wants and needs, prepare spiritually, get access to their account. We'll be going through these things in just a minute. Search their family tree before you meet with them. Prepare a lesson based on their needs and wants, and include an invitation for them to complete temple ordinances of their relatives if you find any or have some that we discuss. And then also invite them to share this new knowledge with others, both inside and outside their family. Oftentimes, what you can do is you teach like one of the parents in a family and then encourage them to teach the rest of their family. I remember going to one of our bishops who the conversation started out with, you don't need to have me come in, it's all done. Of course, I love it when anytime anybody says it's all done, but especially when it's your bishop. So I said, well, can I still work with you a little bit? And he says, yeah, sure, but you're not going to find anything. And so what happened was we met, and I showed him right away there was a ton of work to be done on his tree. And that changed his heart right then and there when he realized, oh, Dad didn't get it all done, or Mom's family didn't do their side completely. And so what the bishop did, though, is he went back and trained his wife and his teenage kids. And through my one contact, we had like 6 or 7 submitters coming out of this, because they taught within their own family until everybody in the family became sufficient. So, you don't have to teach everybody in a family. If you work it right and teach one that's willing to help teach the others in the family, you get a whole family covered by one person visiting. Okay, so you want to start with that personal contact. Now, this gal's on a phone. You can do it across the aisle in church or over the pew or in the cultural hall or in the hallway or wherever you meet. But meet together with the person, set a date and time to actually get together. But the important thing is try to get from them what they would like to see as an outcome. You say, yeah, I'm a Temple and Family History consultant. I'd like to help you with your family history. How can I help you? What would you like to do? What would you like to learn? And find out from what they want. Of course, you're going to want to steer them around towards doing some temple work too. And in that regard, make sure that they understand that you're there on the stake president and the bishop's errand. Because there isn't a stake president or a bishop anywhere who wouldn't want you helping these people get to the temple themselves, if possible, and to do their family's temple work, because we all understand the blessings and importance of saving those on both sides of the veil. Okay, so once we've had that personal contact, you're going to want to seek the Spirit. You're going to want to have the Spirit when you meet them the first time, when you plan for them, when you get back together with them. Don't be afraid to pray with them. A lot of people feel a little reluctant to do this, but it's perfectly appropriate and brings the Spirit in. And remember, the whole point of this is we're trying to help our patrons turn their hearts to their ancestors. Okay, get access to their account. Now, there's two ways to do this. The best way is this one, and this is to go to your helper resources. You get there by going to the question mark, and on the drop-down, click on helper resources, and then it'll say people you're helping, and right underneath that, it says add someone. When you click on add someone, you get 3 links there. If this is a person who's in your ward or stake, the system will be able to identify them if you just put their name in. If they're not in your ward or stake, you just don't want to go that route, you can just ask, you just say, I want to do it by email, and put a person's name in the email and then generate the link that'll go there. Or just copy the link. And if you're doing this from your phone, you could then send them a text. But that's a good way to do it. The key to this is that once they've accepted it, then you don't have to go through this again for the next year. For a whole year, you'll be able to just go into helper resources, click on their name, and you go to their account. And you don't have to worry about remembering their helper number, their birth date, or their username, or any of these things, because you're hooked up. The weakness in this is oftentimes they don't know they're getting this email, or they don't recognize it. So what I always do, and we did this just this last weekend with one of our new patrons, is I made this link, went to the ward list, pulled her up, sent the email, and then I texted her and said, hey, go look at your email. I sent to your Gmail a link. Click on that so that we can get started helping you with your family history. And she got right on it, jumped on it, and within a couple of minutes, we were able to start working with her. But I've found if you don't warn the people, oftentimes it doesn't get responded to. And so it kind of helps to go that extra little step. Now, the other option is to go to the Help Others link, the little lifesaver symbol that's over on the upper right corner of your screen in FamilySearch, and then put in their helper stuff that you've already gathered from the person. You either have their username and their helper number, or you have their full name, their full birth date, and their helper number. And then if you put those in correctly, it'll let you go in and be their helper. The downside is every time you come back to FamilySearch, you're going to have to do this again. So you're going to have to keep track of that helper information, and it's just a pain. And you don't get the benefit of the things that's over in helper resources. It will be showing you. So the best way to do it really is with the helper resources. Okay, so when you do get into helper resources, and by the way, if you've never helped anybody, you can still go in there and experiment with helper resources because it will pull up your stuff. You're always in there. Whether you're even a consultant or not, you'll be able to see your personal information. And so I'm showing you the left-hand side of the screen where it has the personal information for a person. In this case, it happens to be out of my family. I moved it around. I got me out of the main place on the screen, put one of my great-great-grandfathers there, just so my personal stuff's not showing. But the right-hand side would be where you would find the people you're helping and where you can add a person to help. And this is the left-hand side, where it shows you really the meat of what's in this helper resource when you want to work with somebody. Okay, you're seeing the tree, and you notice over there on the very left side, it has tree highlighted. And so that's one of the key things. It allows you to see right away the patron's tree, the way the patron sees it. But above there is a little link for discovery ideas, and we're not going to spend the time there today. Just know that it has all kinds of discovery activities that apply to your patron. These are those fun activities that you get messages about on Sundays often, or you can find under activities on the homepage of your own account for FamilySearch. Things like cemeteries and famous relatives, picture me, and all these other things that they have under the activities. It also will have hints for people in this tree. It'll have research ideas and temple opportunities. So these things are all found under those discovery ideas. So if you're trying to find a name for the temple, one place you could go right off the bat is go to discovery ideas and go down to temple opportunities and explore those. That could save you a lot of time. That's the non-genealogist way to get over there into their tree and find some names for these people to do. You don't have to know anything about research to be able to do that. Okay, and this is also the place where you're going to find a place where you can leave notes, and you can also make lesson plans. And we'll be going through that in the next lesson. It'll be the second lesson next month, when we will actually walk through a couple of lessons and show you from the step one to the lesson plan what you should go through to do a good lesson. Okay, now when you're there, you can actually get over into their tree because you've clicked on the patron's name, so you're now using their account. And you're looking at their tree, and if you click on one of those people in that band chart, their page is going to pop up, and if you click on either tree or person down at the bottom of their little card, it will then take you right over into their tree so that you have a chance to see what's going on in their tree before you ever meet with them. And you can tell that you're working with them because in the old days, this little green thing on the side that said you're helping so-and-so was over on the side. Now it's a big long bar across the top that's in green. This says you're helping so-and-so. In this case, it would be Amanda K. Dixon, who was one of the missionaries in our ward at one time. Okay, so use these helper resources to explore their tree. Let the Spirit guide you. It's amazing how many times the Spirit has taken me when I've gone into the tree to help somebody right to a place where it can work, where I can find just exactly what I needed for the person. And the Lord answers our prayers. Make it easy on yourself. Stay in tune with the Spirit. Okay, You're going to end up needing to prepare a personalized lesson after you've explored their tree. And so that's what we're going to talk about in detail next month when we create a detailed lesson plan to accomplish whatever the goal is. And the idea is to try to have a lesson that's no more than 30 minutes. So you'll see me in some situations where I could go a lot further, but I'm going to provide just enough that I think we could cover in 30 minutes time. The next step in the process is to invite them to complete temple ordinances. It's really important. And you've got to be sensitive because you're going to have patrons that can go to the temple. You're going to have people that are not endowed yet. And so they're going to be limited. They could be new members. They can only do baptisms. But you're going to want to impress upon them that you want them to reserve names, even if you can't do the work yet for them. They might need an endowment, and yet you're not endowed yourself, but have these names ready so that when you reach that point, you can. Do everything you can to make sure that they're actually going through with the process. If you can sit there and actually walk them through the steps and see the card created, or see them share the name with the temple, which is the other way they can be qualified as a submitter, then you've kind of accomplished your goal. What's really sad, and you find this a lot of times, especially with the youth, is you can get them to reserve names, but you can't always get them to do that step of printing the cards, because they don't know then how they're going to get them printed. They don't know where they can go to find them in a situation like off of a computer that's hooked up to a printer, how to actually get them printed. They may not know how to print it from their phone. And so you want to really not just assume people know what to do, but help walk them through it at least that first time. And then the last step in this process is invite to share these new skills with others, with their family members or their friends or whomever, kind of invite them to do that. You'll be surprised. It makes the work that much easier on everybody if you can convert one person into doing family history and they can convert another person, we've now doubled our efforts. And so, if you've lit the fire under the person, why not take the benefit of it? Just kind of like missionary work. You bring the gospel to one person, and what's the first thing you do? You ask them if they could find some of their friends that might be interested likewise. Same thing here. Okay, now, does this really make a difference? You'd be surprised how much the church actually goes out and studies things. And so they had that same question when they introduced Find, Take, Teach, one-on-one teaching. And so what they wanted to see is what was the factor that changes a member from being a non-submitter to one who submits names regularly? Because even though we can't tell who in our ward is submitting names, Salt Lake knows every one of us that submits names. They know how many names we've submitted, how often we've done it. If we have a recommend, they know how many times that recommend gets used. They know all these things that we don't. And so they can do some real studies. But for this one, they had to go out and they started realizing shortly in 2016, shortly after this was introduced, the number of submitters went up. So they started making lists of people that they recognized had not been submitting names in the past and contacted them and said, why are you doing it now? What was the thing that makes the difference? Now you suddenly want to submit names. This is what they found out. 85% of these new submitters had a personal helper, translated temple and family history consultant. And 65% of these new submitters had multiple visits from that helper. So most of those people that had a helper were having a helper who came more than once. And so that might be a clue right there that one and done may not do it. You may want to have more than one. Basically, what I've tried to do in our ward over the years is convince people that once you start working with a person, they're yours. Keep working with them over the years, even if it means just once a year you get a hold of them and say, hey, how are things going? Is there something new we can talk about? So, consider this. This is proven from Salt Lake as an effective way to do things. And of course, in 2018, everything became even easier when, as Elder Bednar says, the easy way to do family history was rolled out when they talked about ordinances ready. And some of us that are the old time genealogists kind of look down our noses at this and say, well, this isn't really doing family history. But the thing is, this is that gateway drug, as Elder Bednar said, to getting people started towards doing real family history work, because anybody can use ordinances ready and generate names to take to the temple that are almost always their family. It's somebody within their family. And so, if the people say, I don't want to learn research, then fine. Let's get them in there and get them to at least take names using ordinances ready. And then the Spirit can work on them and hopefully get them motivated over time to wanting to learn a little bit about their real tree and what's out there. Okay, so this is, like I say, a great way to introduce people to getting their own family names to the temple. And, in fact, last year, I thought it was interesting in 2023 at Roots Tech when they had the leadership meeting for temple and family history work, Elder Gong introduced the fact that the brethren wanted us last year to push to have every active member of the church use ordinances ready to submit a name. And unfortunately, it didn't really catch on very well because the numbers didn't change all that much last year. And it's a shame because that was a great opportunity to teach everybody that has access to either a computer or a smartphone or any smart device to use this. And those of us that have used it know it's a matter of 2-3 minutes, and you can have a name and card printed. And so it's not a hard process to do. And it's a way to get people started, especially if they're reluctant. Okay, now the second half of the lesson today. Wanted to cover this because this is where we're going to be headed, which is finding names for people. Of course, there's two types of names. There's the ancestral names that we don't talk about an awful lot because, for most of our LDS people, they have a fairly well-developed tree. There are new converts that have no tree, but a majority of our patrons are going to be people that have a tree. And so we're going to be spending a lot of time going back up that tree and then coming down looking for cousins to submit. So we'll really focus on that, even though in that lesson next month, when we show you how to do a lesson, I'll do one that's an ancestral one, where we're actually going to add names to the tree. And then we'll do a descendancy one. So you can see a lesson prepared for both kinds of things. But let's talk about finding cousins. Because there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. There's what do we call the golden 1800s, or in the United States at least. This is the fertile ground that you want to kind of harvest to find missing people for the temple. And this fertile ground actually ends around the year 1914, because anybody born after that time, 1915 and on, unless you're closely related to them, if you're part of their immediate family, you're not going to be able to do their work without getting permission from immediate family members. And so you're best off not to work your way down into there, to stop at around 1914, where you can still submit names without having to show immediate family relationship or permission or any of that. And so we call this the golden area for a couple of things. One of them is there's a lot of people there. But secondly, it's also a time period where there's a lot of great records. There's censuses that show the whole family. There's marriage records that are starting to become popular. There's death records and burial records and church records and all kinds of records in a much greater amount than there was in the prior time period. You also have, this is a time period where the world was growing rapidly in population. The United States was just blossoming. And so you've got a lot more people that you can work with. And as you go back on this timeline, back into the 1700s or the 1600s, you get in a shrinking population, and odds are most of them are definitely already in tree. And B, there's not as many records to work with. And so what you're going to want to do when you're actually looking for these names of people to do, you're going to find most of them are going to be found in this time period here. But we're not going to start here looking for them. What we're going to do is we're going to go, if these people are LDS and they've had members in the church for any length of time, we're going to want to go back beyond their earliest LDS ancestors. Okay, we want to get before the people that join the church. Why? Because once they join the church, the family starts making sure that all these descendants are done. They really focus on that. Prior to that time period, the big push in the past was do your ancestors. And so you would just go back working from generation to generation, finding the ancestors and their children. And that's about all you did. And the only child that was brought down towards the present is the one that you came through. And so you find a lot more success if you figure out where their last ancestor in the church is on a line, and then go back a couple more generations. Understanding that you're playing kind of a game of chance. The further back up this tree you go, the bigger the chances are you're going to get into problems in tree. I mean, there's no way to get around it other than just saying that the further back in tree you go in most lines, things start going bad because people add extra people in, and there's confusion, and there's merged records where one person in tree now represents 3 different people in life, and all kinds of problems. So you don't want to get back too far, but you want to get back before the time that the people that we're looking at were actually in the church. So this will take you back probably to the time period between, say, 1725 and 1800. Don't really want to go back much more than that. Now, how can you tell if a person's a member of the church or not? Well, there are several different things. One thing is to understand a little bit about the way family tree was put together. Actually, originally it was called FamilySearch. when they created New Dot Family Search before Family Tree, they basically took all the church membership records and at one time dumped those into Tree. And so on a given day when people are added to Tree, they all get the same beginning part of this random number, this their ID. That beginning part's all the same. And so when they actually did the dump into Tree, if you want to call it a dump, that's what they would call it. When they put all these membership records into Tree at the same time, it just so happened that the random number started with KW. And virtually every record that the church had that was a membership record that was put in at that time got this same KW to start. And so you'll find in your ancestry a lot of ancestors with KWs. For the most part, those are members of the church. There's a few that don't have KWs, and now we can't protect that KW number. So if there's merges, the KW can actually be merged away. But that's one way to do it. Another way to test if a person was a member of the church is kind of look where they were living. If they die in Utah or Idaho or in Nauvoo or winter quarters, yeah, you're looking at somebody that was most likely a member of the church. They didn't have to be when they were there, but most likely they were. And the other one, the big one, is look at their ordinances. And if their ordinances show dates when they were alive, if they lived to 1893 and they have an endowment in 1845, well, they must have been a member. So there are several different ways that you can usually kind of find out, how people were, whether they were members or not, and then go back from there a couple of generations. If these people, if your family wasn't in the church, but the last generation or two, well, then just take any line, go back to about, 1750 or so, because we're going to be coming down from there. And when we come down, we don't want to end up after 1914 if we can help it right away. So it's better to get back there a ways. And as you go back, do try to verify the pedigree's good, that there's not any duplicate parents and things like that, and get the pedigree straightened out that you're working from. So at least going back, it's fairly accurate. So you picked a starting point. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find cousins. And there'll be 2 lessons later on this year showing the 2 main products that we use for descendants. One of them is the descendancy view in FamilySearch, which is found in the pedigrees. It's not really a pedigree, it's a descendancy, but it's found as part of the group of pedigrees that we have, different kind of pedigrees views. And we're going to show you how to use the descendancy view to help you find ancestors, especially focusing in on people that have hints, those little blue boxes that we can show on the descendancy view to help us in finding information about these people that might lead us to new names or to better identify the people so that they can get their work done. The second one is finding your cousins using the program called Pazilla, a third-party product that is totally different in looks. It's more of a visual program, but it allows you to take a certain ancestor and either build their ancestry or in this case, their descendancy, and you can see a huge swath of your descendants of your ancestors in one view from this program. And it can even tell you which ones don't have ordinances or which ones are end of line people that might have a spouse and children but never been found yet, things like that. And so we'll do a lesson on the descendancy view. We'll do a lesson on Pazilla as we go through these lessons this year. Okay, just remember, as we're doing all this, we tend to sometimes get off in our mind that we're just doing this task. We're not really just doing a task. We're trying to help others to learn to love family history. So if you stay in tune with the Spirit, you'll be able to get the message through to the people that this is exciting, this is urgent, this is essential for their progress and their exaltation and for their ancestors' exaltation. And so in our next lesson, we will actually build a couple of lessons for you that would actually be used with a patron. Okay, like I said, this is the second in the series. The first one was entitled, I'm a New Consultant, Where Do I Start? And this is found in our YouTube channel that you'll be directed to later tonight with the link for this lesson. You can find that one there too. Just look for the lesson called I'm a New Consultant, Where Do I Start? And that gives you the foundation for your calling. This is the second in the series. That's the first one. And our channel, YouTube channel, if you just remember Fresno North Stake, and then just add consultant trainings and do a search for that in YouTube, you'll come to our channel. So, questions? We have pretty much reached the end here.